Let's be honest, in today's wild, interconnected world, trying to get a handle on cybersecurity risk is a massive challenge for pretty much every organization out there. But the real problem isn't just about the tech, it's about communication. How do you get everyone, from the folks in the server room all the way up to the boardroom, to speak the same language about risk? Well, today, we're going to pull apart the NIST Cybersecurity Framework 2.0 to see how it tries to solve that exact problem.
All right, here's how we're going to break this all down. We'll start by looking at the cyber chaos that made this framework so necessary in the first place. Then we'll define what the CSF 2.0 actually is. After that, we'll get into its 6 core functions, see how you take it from theory to practice, and finally, we'll wrap up by talking about why this whole thing really matters.
Okay, so let's set the stage. Why was a framework like the CSF even needed? The short answer is that the sheer scale and complexity of cyber threats were creating a total communication breakdown and a management nightmare.
I mean, think about it. Without some kind of shared structure, a common language for risk, managing all of this just becomes a reactive, chaotic mess. It's like trying to build a house, but your whole team is working from different sets of blueprints. It's just not going to work. So the NIST framework was created to be that single, clear blueprint that everyone can use.
So that's the problem. What's the solution? Well, that's where the Cybersecurity Framework from the National Institute of Standards and Technology, or NIST, comes into the picture. They're a U.S. government agency that's all about setting technical standards.
Now, at its heart, the CSF 2.0 is a voluntary guide. And this is super important. It's not a rigid rule book you have to follow or else. Instead, it's this really flexible menu of high-level cybersecurity goals. So think of it less like a strict mandate and more like an adaptable toolkit that any organization can use to figure out where they stand and how they can get better.
So what's it really trying to help organizations do? Well, it boils down to these 3 main things. First, to really understand and assess what their cybersecurity situation looks like right now. Second, to help them prioritize what to do about the risks they find. And third, to communicate all of that effectively to everybody who needs to know. It's really a continuous cycle of checking, planning, and talking.
Now, this is really interesting because it shows a huge shift in thinking. The original version was specifically for improving critical infrastructure cybersecurity, but with version 2.0, they dropped that part completely. And this wasn't just some minor name change. It was a huge signal that this framework is for everybody. Any organization, any size, any industry, from your local doctor's office to a giant global company.
Okay, let's get into the guts of the framework. Its 6 core functions. As you'll see, these create this continuous loop of risk management, which is a concept that anyone studying or working in this field absolutely has to get their head around.
So take a look at this wheel diagram. It gives you a great visual of the 6 functions. And the first thing you'll notice is they aren't steps in a line. They're all happening at the same time, continuously. And right there in the middle, you've got this new function, govern. That's a huge deal in version 2.0 because it's the central strategy that guides how an organization does everything else.
Let's start with govern. So what's that all about? This is the big picture stuff. It's about making sure cybersecurity is woven into the organization's overall risk strategy. It answers questions like, what are our rules? Who's in charge of what? And how do we make sure our security efforts actually help our business succeed? Basically, govern sets the strategy that steers the whole ship. Next up is identify. This is kind of the discovery phase. And the principle here is so simple. You can't protect what you don't know you have. This function is all about getting a complete picture of everything in your organization, your laptops, your data, your key partners, so you can really understand the cybersecurity risks that come with them. Okay, so once you've identified all your stuff and the risks, the next logical step is to protect it. This function covers all the preventative measures an organization puts in place. We're talking about things like access controls, making sure data is secure, and of course, training employees not to click on sketchy links.
But let's be real, no defense is ever perfect. That's why the next function is detect. This is all about finding threats that manage to slip past your defenses. It involves things like continuous monitoring and analysis to spot weird activity or any other signs that an attack might be happening.
So, you've detected something fishy. Now what? You respond. This function is where your incident response plan kicks in. It lays out exactly what you need to do to contain the damage of an attack, analyzing what happened, stopping the threat, and communicating clearly with everyone who's affected.
And finally, after an incident is under control, we get to recover. This function is about having a plan to get systems and services back up and running quickly and safely. The whole goal here is to get back to business as usual, minimizing the disruption and the financial hit.
So we've gone through the what of the framework. It's 6 functions. But how does an organization actually use this thing? How do you take these ideas and turn them into action?
Right? That's the million-dollar question. And to get from these big ideas to a concrete plan, the framework gives us 2 main tools: organizational profiles and implementation tiers. These are what allow you to customize the 6 functions into a real-world action plan that makes sense for you.
An organization starts by creating what's called a profile. And you can just think of a profile as a customized snapshot of your cybersecurity goals, all based on your specific needs, legal requirements, and how much risk you're willing to take. It's a way to make the framework your own.
And this is where the magic really happens. You create 2 profiles. First, a current profile to document where you are right now. Then you create a target profile to define where you want to be. The gap between those 2 is your roadmap. That analysis tells you exactly what you need to work on and helps you build a smart, prioritized action plan.
Now, to help build those profiles, the framework gives you something called tiers. And it's really important to note, these aren't maturity grades. It's not like getting an A or a C. Instead, tiers are a way to describe how your organization manages risk. They range from Tier 1, which is kind of reactive and ad hoc, all the way to Tier 4, where cybersecurity is proactive and just part of the company culture. Your current tier helps you ground your current profile in reality, and your target tier helps you decide how ambitious to be with your target profile.
Okay, let's pull back for a second and look at the big picture. Why does all this matter? Why should an organization, and why should you, as students and future leaders in this space, really invest time in understanding this?
Look at this diagram. It really nails one of the biggest wins of the framework. It creates a common language about risk that gets everyone talking to each other, from the technical folks all the way up to the CEO and back down again. It builds a bridge over that huge gap that often exists between security operations and business goals.
And this quote from the source document just says it all perfectly. It's fundamentally about translation. It lets cybersecurity pros talk about risks and ask for money in a way that the C-suite and the board will actually understand. And that ensures that the money you spend on security is always tied directly to the mission of the business.
So, I'll leave you with this question to chew on. The CSF 2.0 is built to be flexible and adaptable. But as cyber threats get smarter and faster, is a voluntary, flexible framework really enough? Or will we eventually need more strict, mandated rules to make sure we're all resilient enough to handle what's coming? That's a huge question for the future of how we govern cybersecurity.